Insider presents Geek Speak with Matthew Harris and Meredith Lachlan. We cover entertainment, news, and tech with special guest appearances. So sit back and enjoy as we geek out together right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Geek Speak for 2021. I hope you all had a great holiday season. And of course, I am here, as always, with my lovely co-host, Meredith Lachlan. And tonight, we've got Cybil Lake with us, and she has several film and television credits. Tom Sizemore was supposed to be here as well. We're hoping he shows up. If you've been around movies, you know Tom Sizemore. He's been in everything like Pearl Harbor and Saving Private Ryan. But Cybil actually wrote and directed and co-stars in this. And I got to tell you, everyone, Meredith, can you get rid of the card there?
I can.
And I tell you, Cybil, Anna, is it Anna or Ann?
I say Anna, but either one.
Anna. She was a crazy bitch. Guys, what we've got these folks here, or what we got Cybil here for, it's called Central Park Dark. And I got a chance to check it out. Meredith hasn't had a chance, but Cybil, like I said, she wrote, directed, co-stars in it. And so, Cybil, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone and then kind of give a little rundown on what Central Park Dark is?
Okay, great. Well, thanks for having me. I really, really am psyched to be here. So Central Park Dark is a horror thriller about a one-night stand that turns into a never-ending nightmare. So basically, I wrote this character, actually, Tom, and he ended up being Tom Sizemore, but it's funny. The name was actually Tom in the film, in the script that I wrote. And Tom is an alcoholic married doctor. And in a relapse, he reconnects with Anna, my character, and we have a past. We've had an affair on and off for years. And during a heated argument, when he tries to end it with me, I jump out of the window, and then it's unclear, because he doesn't see my body land anywhere, if I'm alive or dead. So I start to torment him, and I appear to him in dreams, and I let him in on a secret about the long history of dark forces in Central Park. And I use these forces and take revenge on Tom. And the rest of the movie is him struggling to get back to his normal life, struggling to stop drinking, and keep the secret from his wife. So that's kind of the story in a real nutshell.
It sounds a little bit like Telltale Heart, though. You know, like the heartbeat under the floorboards, and exactly, you know what I'm talking about.
That's great. Yeah, I love that idea. Poe was an inspiration when I was really young. It's funny.
Oh my gosh, love his stuff. Matthew, what were you going to say? Sorry, I
was just saying I love Poe as well. I bought my wife this collection of Poe, and it's like this thick, and we both read on it. But I got the same impression. And you know, a lot of the weirdness of the supernatural stuff does occur in Central Park. Now, did you guys really film in Central Park?
Yeah, we did. And, you know, it was in some ways easier than I would have expected, and in some ways harder. And so it's at night, and the main problem was noise, because it's still New York City. There's planes, there's cars, there's buses, and you can still hear them. So the sound person had us constantly stopping, redoing things. But we'd gotten permits, and there was a scene later in the film, I don't know if you remember, but I start to dig a hole. Initially, we were all going to move to New Jersey and shoot that in New Jersey because I'm digging a hole. But then it was like not feasible because we were already behind schedule, and so we decided we were just in the outer bounds part of Central Park. We would start to dig this hole, and I'd never dug a grave before, obviously. So
are you sure about that?
So when I started, I was just like, and then Tom improvised a great line, which was, "You can't really dig a hole," and then that was great because the scene wasn't about the hole anyway, you know, it wasn't really, it was about us anyway. And then we just moved on. So it was like such a blessing because yeah, it was never really about that grave. Like, we don't even have a shot of it, you know? I just have a shovel. And he was like, you don't really think you're going to dig a grave, do you?
Right.
And
Yeah, I remember that.
like, and that's like so simple. And it's funny how you think you have to do sometimes in filmmaking this massive thing, like we were going to move everybody to a different state to do this digging of the hole. And like, it turns out like it wasn't really about that in the scene, you know?
Right. No, it's about tormenting him a little bit more. And
Yeah.
so I have to piggyback off of that with you guys really filming in Central Park. Cybil, I'm all about purple. You were wearing that purple nightie in the middle of Central Park, climbing up on this rock. How did that go? I mean, there had to be some wolf calls.
It was late enough that there weren't that many people. You know, a fair amount of people leave. Like, a lot of people leave right after sunset, I would say. There's like an exodus of the park. So nobody was even around there. Like, there were a couple teenagers here and there, and that was it. It's really kind of weird that it empties out as much as it. And then I think Central Park officially closes at 2 a.m. You're not allowed to go, and you get a ticket if you go afterwards, you know, probably to prevent like people who are homeless and stuff. But
Right.
I found those scenes, and that was just improv too. And I was in a crazy mood. I was like, I'll just get on this rock and like we can have these like sequences for later. And they ended up being great. You know, they ended up working out great. You never know, you know.
Mhm. Well, you know, we have a really quick question here from one of our listeners. Did this film during the pandemic? And if so, what was the biggest challenge?
No. I've been doing post-production and selling the film during the pandemic. So I've been just doing technical stuff, and we've been doing a little more editing and post-production, technical, boring stuff during the pandemic. And so that's kept me busy actually during the pandemic. You know, I think in a weird way, it's been kind of a grace that like I've had this thing that I've always had to focus on, you know, because it was like we had to get it done, you know, and we had a lot of technical problems. But in a way, I think now looking back to like last year, it kind of like carried me. It kind of kept me sane because I had to do it. We had to figure out problems, you know.
Right. I just wanted to ask, there was a couple of times, I don't want to give anything away on the movie, but there are a couple of times, and you just mentioned before we got on the air that you have a couple of toddlers. So were you pregnant during the filming of this? Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering because some points before the plot progresses, the way the gown hugged you, I was like, wait a minute.
I know. It's like my ever-changing body. I've never had a project, any like film or TV project I've ever been in, where I was like, there, you know, like, I mean, when I'm like
creative
30 pounds
angles,
heavier. I'm like
creative
30 pounds
angles,
heavier. And then like, whoa, it's like I have a different body. You know, it taught me a lot because I realized that like I showed some people, and a lot of people didn't even notice, and I was like, damn, you know, people work out so hard, and like people don't even notice 30 pounds, you know. And I'm not tall, you know.
I deserve props for being a guy and
totally
taking the chance to ask that question, because if you hadn't been,
oh man, you would be
I could have
very
totally
rude.
thrown this interview. You know,
I
hell no, I
like
wasn't
so
pregnant.
I just went on a diet midway through. Yeah, actually, so we had a really tight schedule with Tom, and he had another project. So this was the only window when I could shoot, and I was starting to show. So initially, there was not really pregnancy stuff and baby stuff in the film. I actually wrote it as the horror film as a metaphor for addiction, you know, his alcoholism, and his inability to stop no matter what. And Anna's, you know, a big drinker as well. So then when we edited it all together, and it sort of wasn't working. So I was like 8 months pregnant at that point. So, you know, we decided we would shoot some pregnancy stuff. And then when I had the child, he was in some of the nightmare sequences. And it's funny because I always kind of secretly like admired people who had like babies in films, but I could never ask people. I was just like a little shy. Like I'm not a really shy person, but there's something about asking somebody about like, can your baby be in my horror film? Like, but once it was mine, he didn't really have a
Right.
choice.
Could you imagine how that conversation went for Rosemary's Baby? You know, we want your child in there, and it's going to be the son of the devil. But go ahead, Meredith.
I did have a
I got
really
the last
quick question because I was looking around, and when is this going to be released? Because you said that you're in post production, and is it going to be video on demand? Where are people going to be able to find this film?
February 2nd, it is going to be on all the streaming services. Amazon, February 2nd is the release date.
Well, they need to update IMDb, especially Tom's, because it just still shows it as in development. There's no, there's no year.
Oh my God!
It just says it's in development.
Oh my God! I have to write that down. I'll remember. That's important. I haven't been on IMDb for a little bit. Like, you know how something, like sometimes I'm on like that all the time. I'm looking on other people and I'm researching certain things, but I haven't actually looked at myself and my project in a while, which is terrible.
And I don't remember on yours if it shows a date or if it just shows in production. But I know on Tom's, on Tom's it just says in production because he's got like a list of them that are in production, and yours is there.
Yeah. I asked him about those, and he said those are some that like I'm considering doing. I was like, maybe I'll do that one.
Too funny.
I know.
Cybil, I've got one more. Go ahead, Matthew. Did you want another one before I put one up?
I did have a question here. Okay. With Cybil, again, try not to give too much away on the movie. But there are these kind of witchcraft, supernatural aspects. Now, was that something that you had already been into, or did it just kind of edge its way into the story? Did you do a lot of research on the witchcraft? You know, how did that come apart about?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So initially, again, it was more, I wrote the script more as a psychological thriller, but then when we edited it together, it wasn't working. So it wasn't working enough. So one way we decided is to raise the stakes a little bit, by adding witchcraft, adding some blood and gore, because without that, my character, if you can imagine some of the scenes, but like I don't do anything, I'm mostly just threatening, but that's not like, the stakes weren't very high because I'm mostly all talk, and it's just like me talk, me being a little intimidating. But when you actually see on the screen that, oh, I've done things in the past and like I'm into this witchcraft stuff, then it's like the alarm goes off and you're like, okay, danger, So that's what raised the stakes, and that we did in post-production. So then I had gone and I did some research about witchcraft, and I got a book. I kind of researched it a little bit. And I found this guy who made these voodoo dolls. I did that. And so I kind of got into it that way. Mm-hmm. I'm actually I'm interested in that stuff because I think, there's like white and dark, it's very interesting to me that, I don't know people who really practice it.
Yeah. I mean, there are some things that I don't mess around with. I think legit voodoo dolls and Ouija boards. Like, no.
Oh yeah. Forget it. I mean, a Ouija board.
I might do a seance, but
I wouldn't actually make a movie with a Ouija board. I wouldn't do it. I would not do it. I wouldn't do it.
I dated an actual Wiccan in high school, and and she was beautiful, and she may have cast a spell on me. I don't know, but the one biggest thing that I remember was that anything that you put out, you get back twice as much. So if you put out good, you get back twice as much good. If you put out bad, you get back twice as much bad. And so that was one thing I was hoping I was going to see interlaced in the movie, was because, again, trying not to reveal too much, because I want everyone to watch the Central Park Dark, because we all know that a lot of stories are regurgitated. They're along the same kind of lines, the same plot lines. Well, this one is different. One, the quote unquote psycho is female in this, and you would think Tom Sizemore. When I first heard this, and it said Stalker Central Park, after a one night stand, I'm like, Tom Sizemore is fucking somebody up. And no, it's not that at all. It flips the script, and then you have this whole other aspect to it. So I was expecting or hoping to see that, that she was going to get messed up for putting all that out there. But I did like where you took the storyline. Now, you may have touched on this a minute ago, and we know how long the creative process. We're both writers. We love to write. And we know from speaking with so many people in this last year that, like yourself, independent directors and writers, that it takes a good long time. So when did you first have the chestnut in the back of your head for this story?
Well, actually, it was years ago, and I liked horror and thriller, and I was actually dating somebody, and he had a place upstate New York, and he said, I would really like to make a horror film here. And being a writer, I was like, great. So I wrote this, and then he was, sort of like, oh, didn't really mean that. And then we ended up breaking up anyway. And what's funny is I wrote the script, and a theme of it is infidelity. And he was the first person that ever cheated on me. And so I didn't know the red flags. But now when I look back at like what I wrote, I'm like, did I intuitively know that like something was going on? I don't know, because I did write about infidelity, and that might have really, we quickly broke up after he read the script, and
he's like, oh shit, she's on to me.
Yeah, it was like really crazy. So initially it was like a horror film in a scary place alone in the woods kind of story, and there was no Central Park, there was no New York City really. So and then I set that aside for a long time. And actually, I started trying to make the film. I had a Kickstarter, and I shot a little reel, which is actually, some of it is in the old footage of the film. And then I set it aside for a long time. I wrote a book. I wrote 2 other TV shows, a feature film. And then I kind of picked it up again. And, that's what happens sometimes. I picked it up again. And then I had the idea, the inspiration, like I could set this in the park, and it could be Central Park dark. And then I got the idea of the mythology of Seneca Village. That was the village that existed before Central Park was built. It was the village that was destroyed to build the park. And so that created a nice, fun mythology. I love it in movies, even horror and thriller kind of movies, where there's, that vestige of history, and you kind of, tie that in, you thread it in. And so my character has this ancestor, Sarah May, who lived in Seneca Village and did witchcraft and voodoo. And in Seneca Village, the village that existed before Central Park, there were schools and churches and cemeteries are kind of my cue for a horror film. So so we have a cemetery kind of in the outer bounds area of Central Park. So in a way, initially it started as this story that was taking place in the woods, like lots of horror films, in the middle of the woods, and it's scary for sure. And then it turned into something totally different. In fact, it really opened up, because I have the history, I have the place, it's really iconic. So it kind of worked out so much better.
Is it one of those things, because I've done this with a couple of stories where you kind of write down the initial thoughts. It's like, it's fast and dirty. And then you put it aside, and then it could be maybe a week, it could be a couple of years, when all of a sudden those voices start talking to you again.
Yeah. I just thought,
totally
I that's what happened. It was like, I couldn't make this, because a thriller horror is like one of the only things that you can really kind of make on a lower budget, and we have a low budget. So I had no money at the time. And this is before Tom was included. And so I started another Kickstarter, and then I got some money. And then I was hiking I think it was in New Jersey, and I got attacked by a dog, which I'm fine.
Oh gosh.
And it ended up that I had to get all these rabies shots and all this stuff. So I ended up getting a settlement. And then the second I got that settlement, I thought, I'm making a film. I'm making that film. It was just like, that's what I'm going to do. Because I was like, I could get like an apartment, but like I could make, I don't think, I was sort of in between places. I think my lease was up, and I was like, I could rent a new place, or I could make this film. And being, you know, a creative type, I'm always like, I'm going to do that. Like,
Yep.
I'm just going to do that because you know, that's just the way I always think, you know.
Now, so we know that you didn't have Tom Sizemore in mind when you wrote this, but
Right.
how did Tom become attached to the project?
So I, you know, was a big admirer of his work, and I was thinking about something that would be a little different for him. And I realized this would be like, because, you know, he's sort of the victim in this situation. I'm
Yeah.
the villain, really, even though, you know, I'm imperfect. No one, you know, I think I was justified, you know, and he is more of a victim. And so that's kind of a different kind of role for him to take on. So I think that's what kind of led him to you know, from what he's told me, that's what. And also I was very like, you know, persuasive. I was like, we got to do this. And I called him a few times. We talked. He read the script really quickly, which really impressed me. You know, some of the actors, like the old man in the film, who's like Tom's mentor, I really admired the way he was. Like, I had this part-time job at the time, which in fact was the only way that I had made a decision to kind of make a film and like compromise certain things. Like, you know, I took this part-time job I wasn't crazy about so I could make this thing, you know, instead
Right.
of something I was, you know, liking more. And I remember the older actor, Roger, he was so proactive, which really impressed me, like, because he's in his 70s, you know, like he came and met me at my lunch, like for lunch, and like no actor. So I really was impressed with the way that Tom like read the script and got back to me immediately and said he wanted to do it. And the way that Roger was so proactive, it really taught me that like to move, you know, some people just sit around and wait. And that's part of like my story is that, you know, as an actor, I always get the same kind of roles and they're nothing like this, you know? So this was a chance for me to really explore a lot of different aspects, obviously, you know, she has a lot of facets.
Yes, to say the least. And folks, if y'all are just tuning in, we have Cybil Lake. I almost said Crystal Lake. I guess I'm having a Friday the 13th flashback there. But Cybil Lake, and she is the writer, director, and co-star of Central Park Dark, which stars Tom Sizemore, which we're still hoping Tom will sneak in here. But Cybil, we are coming up on the 30-minute mark here real quick. Do you have a hard out? Do you have to go at the 30 minutes?
No, I can say a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
perfect.
But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because one of the questions that I love to ask our guests is the Genesis story, because I'm kind of like the black sheep of the family. They don't understand like this whole creative process. They're like, they're like,
Yeah.
who are you and how are you related to us? Because because of all the things that I love to do. Did you get pushback or did you get support when you were growing up? And what was that like? I mean, I'm sure that, when you said, well, I want to make films, they were like, yeah, but what do you want me to do to make, like to pay the bills?
Yeah. No, it's so true. I was definitely the black sheep. I was the middle child. And it's funny because, you know, someone asked me for the first time today if this is my stage name. And I was like, no, that's so funny. But initially, like when I first started acting, I was like, people are going to probably think this is my stage name. And then I actually haven't thought about that for years. And someone asked today, and I was like, oh, wow, because, you know, and it's funny because my parents are scientists. So, you know, but my dad is creative. Like he taught me to paint and they were very like supportive of my writing and stuff like that. So they were initially very supportive. Yeah. So my brother and sister, they're Jennifer and Stephen. And then, you know, in the middle, they had an inspiration to call me Cybil. So, you know, they should have known what they were asking for, you know? So, but I like, even at a young age, I love performing. I love acting. I knew at a really young age, I wanted to act. And I also started writing stories super young. And so those are like my two like passions, 100%. And, so initially my parents were supportive. And then once it kind of hit them like, oh, it's not a normal job like other people like us, like where you go through this thing, you get a job and then you get the next promotion. They realize how insane it is. Like, you know, the realities of the business, you know, are intense, you know, like it's not a good statistic kind of thing, you know. So then they were like, you got to figure out something else, you know. But
yeah, what's your plan B?
Yeah, and for me, that's just not the way I think. I mean, if I don't do, especially something, I've learned now being, having two young kids, some people like sort of, maybe set stuff aside. For me, I had to even do more creative stuff because I don't know why. Actually, it's like really strange. Like I need way more. I need to be more creative, and I'm not really sure why. Maybe it was actually going to be my progression, whether or not I was going to have kids. That I was just going to be. I've been feeling like so inspired. I have so many projects in the pipeline, and I'm really grateful for that. And when there was a period where, so I made a feature film in my 20s. It was good, but in retrospect, if I had what I know now, like I could have sold it, but I didn't know, and I got discouraged and set it aside, and then kind of like got away from film and TV for a while. And then I got cast in a couple of things, and I was like, damn, I really miss this. And I wrote a bunch of scripts, and I started making some. And then I was just like, okay, what if you go back into this, you have to know that it's not like a fair game, that super talented, super people never get to struggle. Like you have to be like understanding what film and TV is if you're going to return 100% to it. And so I kind of made that pact with myself. I should remember that more, I was like, okay, well, you have to understand this is like the creative life is very different than a lot of other lives.
Well, that's like Joelle just said. She said a lot of us in the arts have that black sheep thing, and we definitely know how that is. I'm in Texas, in case my accent made you think I was from Ireland, but I have a lot of redneck family, and so being the geek, being the
Wow.
writer, being the
Oh my
brain,
God.
the guy that got good grades, I was the
Yeah.
outcast, and so I
Yeah.
always tried to conform into what I was supposed to be, so to speak, but.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask because you segued right into this, about always needing to be productive. So this is something that we have talked with so many other people about, and we get a wide range of answers. When the pandemic hit and everything was getting shut down, were you more productive during that time, or was it more turmoil and you just weren't able to focus?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both, but I think mostly it's been the focus part because there's not a lot left to do. One thing I like to do actually as a writer and just as a person is like I like to like have coffee and tea at cafes. Like that's like when I was in New
Right.
York. I'm in LA right now, but I've only been here a year and a half. And for 22 years, I've lived in New York. And one of the greatest things about New York is, kind of people watching and LA as well, to be fair, like you can go to places and that's just like, I really like the hustle and bustle. But the truth is like, it's not like I didn't have the attention to really do that much writing. So I wasn't really, the places are shut down here. So
Mhm.
the only time that I have like is when the kids are napping or if I have a babysitter. And now it's like I do some exercise, meditation, and I do creative things. Those are pretty much the only things I do. And before I'd kind of poke around, go to a cafe, I don't know, maybe do some errands, but there's like none of that to do. So it's like really just like I've been feeling I've been feeling incredibly creative, and there's periods where I'm able to actually kind of get some of that. And now I've been just like mostly promoting the film, but I can actually feel like it's like almost like a clogged pipe where I get this anxiety that's like I'm not like writing and creating enough, and it's really like a release I need. Maybe
Yeah,
it's just because
it's
I've been
just
doing it
busting
so.
out of you.
Yeah, and I hate the feeling. It's like the worst feeling because my babysitter's not been available this week, and it's been like it makes me it makes me actually super anxious.
Right.
And I have only so much time now, and I use it. I mean, I edited the film, a lot of the time when the kids were sleeping, and now like I was writing a new project when I finished some of the technical stuff. I was like writing some. And then, but this week, beginning of this year so far, I've had a really hard time concentrating. And I'm not sure why. I think it's because I know the film's coming in 3 weeks, and there's this overwhelming feeling like I have so much to do in terms of promoting it that I have like a general sense of overwhelm that I didn't totally expect. Today I have it less. I think Monday and Tuesday, it was like, whoa, I have so much I can be doing, you know?
Right. And just in case you missed it earlier, folks, what was the date again, Cybil?
February 2nd.
February
2021.
2nd.
Can you believe it's 2021? That's like a time that doesn't even seem real, you know?
I never thought I'd make it to the year 2000, let alone 2021. You know,
I was like a wild teenager, so I understand. Like, I mean, for me, I never even thought like no, it just wasn't even a reality.
The older that we get, you know, the quicker that time goes by, you know.
Totally.
So it's just like, you know, half the time I'm like, I don't know what day it is, much less like what month or year it is, you know.
And you're right.
I mean, I totally feel that way.
How come time these days doesn't go as slow as the 4 years of high school that we spent?
Right? I know. Or junior high.
Right.
Like,
those years just creeped by, you know, just slow. Every day was like a year. And now I turn back and they're going, hey, your 35th graduation ceremony's coming up. I'm like, what the hell?
It's frightening. It's frightening. And it's like, for me, the best release for me is definitely like some creative work almost every day. And I have friends who are like, oh, I always want to. And I'm like, I don't really have a choice. Like, I am really uncomfortable if I don't write or maybe even work on a piece, like acting wise, or just be, you know, shooting something. I really need it because I just feel, I actually feel really purposeless without it. Like, without creative stuff, I feel super, like, I love being a mother, and I think I'm like a super duper mother, but I don't, but it doesn't like fill me the way that I know it fills some like women. It's like I never was that person that was like, I need to, you know, like be that and then I'll be fulfilled. Like, I knew for me, it's like, I actually am never fulfilled very long. It's always something else. Like, I just need to constantly, maybe if like I did like 10 projects, then I'd feel okay. I'd feel like
that sounds like a little bit like mania, just a tiny bit.
Totally, I know. This is what it is.
Which I totally get.
It's actually become that, and it wasn't like this a couple of years ago. I've become this. I don't know why. Maybe because time is going so fast. You know, time is flying by, so it's like, oh my god, you know.
Now, I did want to ask you something really quickly. When did you realize that all of this stuff that you're doing, these creative endeavors, when did it become from like maybe a hobby to something that you just wanted to do perhaps for the rest of your life? You know, when
wanted it as a
wanted
hobby.
to become never as a hobby. That's interesting.
No, because in fact, I have like an aversion to that word, because I find it like, it's to me, it's like, oh man, I don't know why. I'm just like, no, not a hobby. This is a purpose. This is a calling, right?
And see,
that's interesting.
My total writing foray ended up because of desperation. I had always been told, Matthew, you're a good writer. You should really pursue this. And I worked for Xbox. I worked for Apple. I was a supervisor for years and years. And I became disabled and I could no longer perform those jobs that I'd done for so many years. And somebody saw something that I had written on Reddit and they were like, hey, have you ever thought about being a writer? And I was like, well, matter of fact, 4 years later, and that's how I pay my bills. I've ghostwritten a lot of books on topics that would bore the living shit out of anyone, but it pays the bills.
That's amazing.
Soul suckers.
Yeah, so that's what Meredith calls them. I share some side work with Meredith, and she calls them soul suckers. But it keeps a little money coming in, and we're able to keep the lights on.
That
but
is
this
so
is where
amazing.
we have fun.
Yeah.
Well, I have another question in here really quickly. What is the biggest challenge of creating an independent film? And that's from Pat from New York.
Oh my God. Yeah, the biggest challenge certainly is raising the budget, I would say. I mean, money greases everything, right? Money
helps.
like, you know, I mean, if you think about people who are like born into super wealth, who are maybe say reality people, I mean, like that money created them that way, so if I had the funds, like I would make tons of movies, my goal with this is actually, like, I kind of dedicate this film indirectly, just in my mind, to people who, have a dream that they want to follow, or are afraid to, start something, because you can really start small, and I'm really happy that I completed this. There were times I set this aside and I was like, I'm not going to finish this. I'm going to work on something else. I was pitching other
Right.
projects. And I was like, you actually need to complete this so that you have a body of work, that is, and then, then I was blessed that I sold it. But I mean, for me, the independent film for sure is it's about cash. It's about cash, people, and also a small crew. But I actually like small crews. I've worked in the past, like on other films that I made with bigger crews, and I was tasked instead with like finding jobs for people who were, there were too many people, so a smaller crew is not an issue. But the other problem with, which actually is indirectly related to the money issue, is I had some people who had to bail because they got higher paying gigs. So I was
Right.
sort of scrambling like 3 days before to fill in almost all the positions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and even though I'd like been working with one camera person for like months on the project, I ended up getting a guy that I met like 2 days before Tom arrived.
Wow. See,
Now-
and the voice in my head was like Rodney Dangerfield going, "I get no respect."
That's right. That's right.
It's like,
That's
oh,
exactly
man.
what it is. That's exactly what it is.
To piggyback off of that, because I cannot think of his last name, but we have spoken with someone else off of Scare Me, off of Shudder. Josh, I can't think of his last name, but anyway, he wrote,
Rubin?
directed. Yeah, Josh Rubin. He wrote, directed, and co-starred, and we know his views on how hard that was. How hard was that on Central Park Dark? Of not only have written it a while back, but then directing it and having
And
Tom
being in
there.
front of the camera, being
Right.
behind the camera, and directing everybody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, for me, Tom is such a good actor that it was easy to switch into being an actor, with him. Those are my favorite scenes by miles. And yeah, as a director, when you have somebody like Tom, I've directed all kinds of actors. When you have somebody like at the caliber of Tom, like your job is kind of done in some aspects. But no, having said that, our first cut, it wasn't working. So we had to go back and sort of restructure things and try to get more creative. But I would say I'm used to directing and acting at the same time. But what I really could have used more of is, we lost our producer right before. So that was too much. And also, like, I had to do a lot of like taking care of Tom, because he's used to larger sets, and he
Right.
needed to be comfortable, like as a person and as an actor within the scene. Like he's a person who has a lot more, he's used to much more bells and whistles. So, I mean, one of my biggest jobs was really taking care of, like, making sure he's okay, and then I would sometimes step aside for a minute, especially with the more, bigger scenes. I would step aside for a little bit. We'd set it up, and then I'd step aside and kind of prepare. I think in retrospect, I would do more of that, because, I certainly give that time to other actors, So if other actors want time, I'm not talking very long, like a minute or two.
Right.
Like you can take that time, But it's funny when it's on yourself. I think that's one of the things I learned is that, I'm willing to do that with other actors, but with myself, I've got to give myself that time out as well if I need it or want it,
Now, I got a question. This one's from my brother, actually, and it was one I was going to ask. So he's got on the same wavelength here. We were talking a minute ago, and you mentioned that you have been writing, and if you had the budget, that you have a lot of stuff that you would like to do. And my question and his is what would be the film you produced right now if you had the budget?
I have a film that I wrote that's very strong. It's a thriller. It's called White Lies and Darker Ones.
Oh,
And
I love that
yeah,
title.
so that's like ready to go. And I would be playing the main role. And there's two main guys. Tom might play a role. It depends if his availability. And so that's a thriller. And it's about a character, Nina. Nina is a mother who seeks revenge for her teenage daughter's death. And instead, she discovers this whole underbelly of her town and all these secrets, especially like some that she discovers are within her own marriage. So it's kind of about this teenager who dies, my teenager. And I descend into this conspiracy that I find out about the town. And it's pretty dark, but what my challenge with that was I tried to write a lot of lightness in the scenes because it's a dark topic, a character dying. But my daughter in the film, she dies just early on. So it's really about me and everybody else.
Mhm.
So that's kind of
Now, are there other genres that you like to write in? Because I mean, obviously with Central Park Dark,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a dark
And-
horror.
So
kind
this
of-
is
you're
a
talking,
thriller.
you're preaching to the choir on that
Yeah.
stuff because we love that stuff here. But
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
this next one, White Lies and Darker Ones, is more of like a straight up thriller. And then I wrote actually something totally different during this pandemic because I wanted to try something different, and that's called Bicoastal. And Bicoastal's a fish out of water dramedy about a New Yorker who moves to LA to become a talent agent while struggling to get sober, reconnect with her husband, and find forgiveness. And I actually shot a sizzle reel during the pandemic, and some of the scenes are sort of these kind of scenes. Like I edited this together. I was pitching this for a while, but then I had to get back to finishing some technical stuff, for the sale of this film. So I'm going to probably pop back to that. I enjoyed that. It's a sort of a dramedy, and that's I also found it really easy because I don't know, it's just sort of an easy genre. It's like sort of funny and sort of real life, It's not as hard as some things like period piece or something, And I have an idea for a period piece, but that's like a long way away.
now I've got a quick question, and then we do need to stop for a break.
Yeah.
We have gone a long time without
Totally.
a break, but
I know.
I just got to know, did you own that purple gown, or was that something you ordered for the movie?
Matthew.
I bought it because I bought it actually at an expensive store because it was the only place I could think of that I'd walked by that sold that kind of thing. And then I had the tags on. And it was totally my intention to return it because it was it was overpriced I thought it was overpriced for what it was. And then I looked at it in the the state of damage. It was oh man, I got this forever. I got this forever. But then it worked out so great because then during the pregnancy scenes, if I had returned it, I wouldn't have those scenes where I'm actually pregnant in that same freaking gown.
Right. No,
I love that
I agree.
question.
And I loved the gown. Like I said earlier, purple 90s, always a plus in my book. Folks, we'll be back in 15 to 30 seconds. I don't remember how long this break is, but we will be right back with Cybil Lake, the writer, director, and co-star of Central Park Dark. We'll be right back, folks. Stick with us.
Okay.
This is the legend of the traveling TARDIS. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Also catch us on the HWWS Web TV YouTube channel. Subscribe today and become part of the legend.
That was a whopping.
We're back.
We're back. That was our buddy over there at the Legend of the Traveling TARDIS.
Christian Basil giving him some love.
Yeah. Cybil, what was the big? I don't want to put you on the spot here, but Tom has been around Hollywood for quite a long time. I'm a movie whore according to some of my exes, and so I watch a lot of movies. I have over 200 on digital, and back in the 90s, freaking Tom was everywhere, man. I mean, anything that was worth a damn watching, Tom was there. How was it working with Tom? I mean, you already said you had to spend some time making sure Tom was satisfied.
Yeah.
And we know how good of an actor he is, and he really encompasses this character. But how was it working with someone of Tom's caliber?
He always shows up and he knows all of his lines. We go through the lines. He knows them pretty well. And he can learn them really quickly. I think that's from being an actor for a long time. It's such a gift. But we had all sorts of problems. I mean, we had all sorts of problems. And that really my biggest job. Nothing to do with acting and writing and directing. I mean, my job was basically babysitting him 100% of the time. And like this kind of situation, like I didn't allow for this kind of situation because I knew where he was at all times, you know? So he was never out of my sight. That's how we finished it. He was never out of my sight. And he said, like, oh, I have to go to a party. I have to meet somebody. I came with, and like, I just came with. Like he was there, and then it's like, you know, I'm going to see you at, I always move it forward. I say, I'm going to see you at 5 o'clock. Okay. That's when it is, you know? So, you know, I have to do all that too. Like an hour, I have to pretend it's always an hour, you know?
So in a way you were kind of Anna to him in real life.
Oh,
yeah, I kind of was.
It's like, I see you.
Except I was a lot nicer. Like, I mean, I got him like, you know, the things that he wanted. So actually it was like, I was more like a sweeter version. Yeah. And also I think it's not just him. I mean, a lot of actors I know of like caliber have all sorts of things. Like, even if it's not like some of his issues, it's other issues, you know, some of them just being huge issues, like huge egos, you know, massive egos, which we all hear the stories about, you know. So I think he's alone, you know, and I think that's just part of working with people who have had a lot of success. In fact, like I say that, like, you know, when you have so much success when you're young, you don't do a lot of things for yourself. Like I had a friend who was visiting as we were done with the set, and Tom had to go, you know, to the airport, and he was like, oh, I don't know how to pack, you know? And I was like, I don't know how to pack. And then my friend being like, she's like way too nice. She's like, I'll help you. And he was like, great, thanks. And he just like, you know, like, you do it.
There's the underwear drawer.
Like, I think that's just, I think when you have had a level of success, there's a lot of things that are done for you. And that is difficult to get in front of, you know.
Well, we're coming up on the hour mark.
Yeah, we gotta roll.
Is there an actor or actress that is on your bucket list of I really want to work with this person, whether it's a co-star or having them on one of your shows?
You're gonna think I'm crazy. You're gonna think I'm crazy. And actually, Tom and I came up on our set, and I was like, "That's so true." He was like, you know what actor I really want to work with? And I was like, who? He's like, Tom Cruise. And I was like, what? And then I do too. Because again, as crazy as he is, as nuts as he is, he's so charismatic. And look at the career he's had. So Tom kind of sold me on Tom Cruise.
One of my favorite actors in Hollywood, in which I still say he's, if not the most, he's one of the most versatile actors in Hollywood. I hope he hears this and he'll come on this show, but that's Billy Bob Thornton. If you've watched any of his stuff, from
he's the best. He's amazing.
He said the Bad Santa, the man is my favorite actor of all time.
Matthew, let's wrap it up though. Let's ask her that final question. And normally I screw it up, so I'm gonna pass it back to Matthew.
You know, Cybil, we ask every single guest on Geek Speak this question, and that is, if you could go back in time and give your younger self only one piece of advice, what would it be?
Push harder. Push harder.
Is that with the kids being born or?
No, with the career. With the career.
I totally
this coming from somebody who's like who said that she's got. Well, I said that she probably has a little bit of mania, keeping busy as hard as you do, and you want to push harder. Okay, you're raising that bar really hard for the rest of us.
Well, and again, folks,
I can't do anything. So I'm
well, Central Park Dark is going to be available February 2nd on Amazon Prime, Apple, and probably anywhere VOD, I suspect.
Yeah.
And this stars Tom Sizemore and Cybil Lake. And folks, I'll tell you again, y'all know, if you're fans of the show, that Meredith and I, we love the indies. We love those different kind of storylines. And this is definitely one of those. It's different. You're going to see Tom Sizemore in a role. Like I said earlier, I fully expected him to be the psycho on this end, but no, it's Cybil, this innocent looking blonde, and she's a psycho bitch in this movie. She is crazy. Cybil, can folks follow you anywhere? Where can they, keep on updates on you, and tell everybody where they can find you and all that good stuff?
So anything, I have Cybil Lake at everything. So it's like Instagram, Cybil Lake, Facebook, Cybil Lake, and Central Park Dark, and Instagram, Twitter, Cybil Lake. I'm not on Twitter these days as much. So I'm really on Instagram the most these days. That's like kind of my niche right now.
Very cool.
And the website once again for the movie?
Oh yeah, and then there's Central Park Dark.
CentralParkDark.com. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
At Geek Insider, we foster relationships with those in the geek sphere so we can give our audience the insider view of entertainment, tech,